Hey guys, we started recording about an hour later than we were supposed to. We recorded a whole intro to the episode, and it was about us having autism potentially.
Because of the Tylenol thing?
Instead, we got to like the intro, and then David was like, wait, what album are we doing this week? And he listened to next week's album. So he has his notes ready for next week. But unfortunately,
I am ready to talk about next week's whole episode early.
and you guys are going to love it, I think. It's the actual Halloween episode. This is just week 3 of Halloween month.
That's right.
But now we are all ready to record, and it's going to be a great episode. So how about we roll the theme song? Uncultured Pop Culture Podcast. My name is Brandon, and with me, as always,
David, the co-host who forgot what we're doing this episode.
Yes, and we have week 3 of Halloween month here for you today, and it should be a good one. I hope it will. David literally just listened to the album, so he's coming fresh off the presses. This is just what has come out of his mind in the past hour.
Very, very fresh. And Brandon has some fresh alternate version of Blade Runner in his head right now, or some bits from it.
Yes, I just saw Harrison Ford say the N-word not too long ago, so very excited to talk about that. But before we get to all of that, we have to talk about what we watched and what we listened to this week. So David, would you like to do the honors?
I watched Before Sunrise, which, do you know anything about Before Sunrise or the Before trilogy?
The only thing I know about it is that we said we were going to watch it next season.
That's right. I got a little sneak peek because it was showing in theaters, so I got to see it on the big screen. And it's pretty much like a romance movie without a plot, kind of. It's kind of like one of the films where people are just talking and kind of like you follow them throughout the day. It's very interesting. I liked it. I don't know if the whole film works. I think it's more the type of film that where there are little moments that really work, and then overall it's just pretty good. That being said, Jennifer did get to see the second film in the trilogy in theaters too that day. I had work, so I had to go. And she said that the second one is a step up. So I'm excited for that one.
Do you think I'll like it when we watch it next season?
I think you'll like it. I just think it might not be like, oh my God, this is so amazing. I think I'll just be like, yeah, it's pretty good.
Like a 3.
Yeah, something like that. It was a 3.5 for me, which, as everyone knows, is like, oh, that's good, pretty good. What have you listened to this past week?
I actually listened to 2 things that I want to talk about, one EP and one album. I also just listened to an album right now while you were listening to this week's album in the past hour, and that was Purity Ring's 4th album. I believe it's their 4th self-titled album. It was okay. It was whatever. I was expecting more from the singles, but the album itself wasn't like super interesting. Anyway, the 2 things I did want to talk about this week. First, I'm going to start with the one that was also kind of a disappointment, Bones by Rainbow Kitten Surprise. I mentioned one of their songs in New Music Friday. Unfortunately, this album just kind of felt under-realized, weirdly. But there's some good moments on here, and all of the songs are good. They're just not great. Not like the lead single, Dang. So it was a little disappointing, but I'm going to continue listening to it because I feel like I'll end up liking it more the more I listen to it.
It kind of feels like that's a trend, isn't it? Where the singles are stronger than the album itself this year.
Yeah, definitely this year. It feels like people are kind of forgetting how to make an album. On that note of forgetting how to make an album, I have an EP that I listened to this week, which is not an album and is actually very good.
Ooh.
It's called Can I Win Just a Little Bit by Landon Conrath. I also mentioned him before because he's from the Midwest. Shout out Minnesota. This was a great EP to the point where I'm probably going to be talking about it at the end of the year.
Oh, that's fun.
And yeah, I don't know what else to say. It's great indie pop music, and it's got that kind of like self-hatred edge that's kind of fun and that you don't really see in a lot of like kind of upbeat indie music.
Would you recommend our listeners listen to it?
Of course. I think pretty much everything I mention on here, unless I say it's bad, I would recommend people listen to. And even then, if it's bad, I still like recommend people listen to bad music, because it's like then you can learn what you don't like and why you don't like it. But also maybe you will have a different opinion than me, which is great, you know?
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and I completely agree with that.
And then my song of New Music Friday this week is actually the most mainstream I can possibly get. It's Tit for Tat by Tate McRae. And all I have to say about this song is pop music is so back. Thank God for Tate McRae.
We needed someone to bring it back.
We needed somebody to do something interesting, and she finally did. So thank God. She's been doing interesting things all year, though, so she's kind of the exception. And then I also had one little fun thing that I'm going to mention one more time. Wichita Blues by Aries is another new song that came out this week that I also wanted to shout out, because I've talked about Aries before, but oh my God, if this album drops this year, it's easily my number one album of the year and might make it onto my like top 10 albums of all time. This is the most excited I've been about an album in years.
A lot of exciting things in store, I will say. I did also want to say this upcoming month, October, well, I guess.
Yeah, the month that's 3/4 of the way done.
Exactly. Is so filled with movies that I want to see. And I'm hoping at least several of them break into my top 10. So fingers crossed that things are picking up for both of us if that album is also released for you.
What's the new Paul Thomas Anderson movie that just came out? And for everybody listening, it'll be like 3 weeks at this point.
One Battle After Another. I've heard a lot of great things about it. To be honest, the trailers didn't really sell me on it. And that's like something that, oh yeah, I'll probably go watch it, but it's not that high up. It's not as high up as some other movies, crazy enough.
I've heard movie of the year from a few people already, so.
Yeah, I've also heard that. I do want to catch it before it leaves theaters, obviously, but at the same time, I'm okay watching it later, because there are movies I want to watch more, and there are literally probably like 8 movies I want to watch next month or in October.
We got a lot to talk about, I guess.
A lot to talk about. But with that,
I think it's officially time to get into our album that David has maybe just heard.
What was the album we're doing again?
Exactly. This is Days of Thunder by The Midnight.
A band I've never heard of before.
Many people have not heard of them. At this point, they released this album independently. July 15th, 2014, it came out. And is it an album? Great question. Maybe. An EP is usually 6 songs or less. There are 6 songs on here. Well, tracks, I should say. An album is usually over 30 minutes. Now, this EP is 37 minutes, and this album is 6 songs long. So it's kind of like either way you call it, it can be whatever. So I'm going to use them kind of interchangeably. I thought of this as an album for a long time because of its length, but we will talk about We Move Forward because that song is over 8 minutes long, and that makes up a significant portion of it.
The potato pretty much with this.
Exactly, yeah. But I will say, anyone who is releasing a body of work with over 6 songs and calling it an EP, you are what's wrong with the music industry. I don't feel that's strong, but it is seriously. I mean, I've seen 10-track EPs. I've seen 12-track EPs.
That's crazy.
At some points, like Ethel Cain released an EP earlier this year that was 9 tracks and an hour and 15 minutes long. I don't care who you are. That's not an EP. If you need to flip the record over when you're playing it, it is not an EP.
I was going to say, at the very least, it's an EEP, an extended play.
Yeah, a double EP.
Yeah, that's crazy. Do you see that often, though? People releasing EPs like that?
Now I do, because words don't mean anything anymore, apparently.
Yeah. I feel like it's partially also like, since you're not limited by the vinyl itself, that's why people can just put as many songs as they want into EP instead of being limited by literally how much space there is on the vinyl.
Yeah, it gets a little ridiculous. That's a conversation for another time, because we have to talk about The Midnight, who I discovered in 2019 from their remixes of Simmel, Arizona, and our connection for this week, The Night Game, going all the way back to our first episode. Sadly, that is not a direct connection. They remixed the song The Outfield, which was from The Night Game's first album, but it is a great remix and a great original song. Honestly, the remix is really good, and it's probably like a 4 out of 5, but the original song is a 5 out of 5. But the fact that the remix is like amazing as well is really speaks to, I think, how good the Midnight is.
Don't you worry, Brandon. We do have a direct connection to a lot of previous episodes. I think you can guess who when it comes to the background of the movie.
Ooh.
We have to have a rapist in every episode, don't we?
Oh my God, is it Harvey Weinstein?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. I didn't even know that this week. Anyway, what a great thing to look forward to as the episode continues on.
Exactly.
Anyway, as we were talking about the difference between an EP and an album, is the Midnight a band? There's two of them, so maybe.
I guess I never thought about that before.
Yeah, they're a synthwave band from Los Angeles, and it's Tyler Lyle, who's from Atlanta, and he's their singer and then like primary lyricist, and then the producer and composer, Tim McEwen from Copenhagen, Denmark. So kind of an interesting background on both of these. They met in 2012 in a writing session, and this writing session resulted in the songs We Move Forward and Gloria, both of which are on our EP today.
Hell yeah. I also want to say I find it hilarious how literally every band from Los Angeles is made up of people that like moved to Los Angeles.
Correct. I had to put that in
anyways.
there because that's just always how it goes. I mean, I get why they're like from Los Angeles, but like the point is they're a band of two people. But I will say they do have touring members. I think they add in like 4 other people that when they go on tour, they like bring the show to life. But they were not involved at this point when this EP came out because this was the first thing they ever did. And now I want to say they're a synthwave band. Have you heard of synthwave? That's the genre this week.
I feel I've heard the term before. I feel like I might have listened to synthwave, but it is quite similar in some ways. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like it's quite similar in a lot of ways to house.
In some ways, yes.
But I feel like it is in some ways close to house and like EDM and the various like forms of EDM or whatever you want to call it. So because of that, I feel like I wouldn't have known if I did listen to synth house because I would have been like, oh, this kind of sounds like this, so it's something else, right?
You got to get deep into EDM to understand the very tiny differences between all of these micro genres. And speaking of micro genres, it is defined as one, which micro genre is kind of a weird term because it usually refers to like a smaller scene. You could say that every genre is a micro genre except for like the broad ones like pop or rock, It is very influenced by the aesthetics and the synthesizers of the 80s. If you couldn't tell, the genre was developed in the late 2000s and early 2010s, mostly by the French, shout out France, taking inspiration from Grand Theft Auto Vice City, John Carpenter, who we will be talking about very soon, hint, hint, Jean-Michel Jarre, Tangerine Dream, and the Greek composer Vangelis, especially his score for the 1982 film Blade Runner, which is why I chose this EP. Knowing this, do you think that The Midnight did a good job of paying homage to these inspirations?
I think that they did, at least when it comes to the people that I know that they were paying homage to, I guess. So for me, that would be mostly Vangelis and John Carpenter. Although, I've heard bits from the other artists too, and like there are other inspirations too.
All songs on the album were written by Tim McEwen and Tyler Lyle, and it was produced, mixed, and mastered by Tim McEwen. So this is very much the two of them doing everything, which I think is pretty cool. And then I also wanted to say they have a motto, the band has a motto, which is Mono no Aware, I believe is how you say it. It's Japanese, and it's nostalgia for a time that doesn't exist. I wanted to bring that up right now because I feel like you can feel that throughout the album, and I'm going to be talking about that specifically in a few songs. And before we talk about one of those songs, I have to tell you, your favorite song I initially thought would be the title track, Days of Thunder, on my first listen. And then I thought, you know what? It might be Los Angeles. So it's either one of those is my final answer, I guess. But we have to start right away with track number 1, The Years Prologue. I wrote only a few things about this song. God, what an intro. It sounds like standing on the roof, watching the sunset in a teenage indie movie, or falling in love for the last time. This is perfect. 5 out of 5.
Hell yeah. This song for me felt like it literally came out of Blade Runner, which shows just how good of a pairing it is. And I also absolutely love it. I love the production first and foremost, including the synth. That being said, the vocals, I think they're good. I don't know if like I need them. I kind of did feel like I just wanted this to be an instrumental. That being said, like it didn't really take away from that. And then the last thing I did want to say, because I also honestly don't have that much to say, but the drums near the end were my absolute favorite part when they come in. That just works so well. You can never go wrong with drums, pretty much. This is a 4.5 for me, and this is my favorite song.
I wondered.
It's just that good.
I think this is one of the songs that perfectly captures that nostalgia. It's like, wow, I wish I lived in the 80s, when you really don't, because it wasn't that great of a time. But
Yeah,
there's
exactly.
something so like magical about the way that the song is constructed. And I did want to say something about you talking about the vocals. Lucky for you, most of their albums have instrumental versions, so you can just listen to the production.
Okay,
Which I think is a really cool thing. I mean, it kind of is like, oh, well, you're missing a part. But then at the same time, it's like you're able to appreciate another part of the song that you may not have been paying attention to.
Exactly. I will say, continuing into the rest of the album, nothing does really reach this high, even though everything does stay like there wasn't anything I disliked. So just going to throw that out there.
Yeah, I mostly agree. And then I also wanted to say, for anyone who remembers a few episodes ago, I talked about a song by the Midnight, and I said they have a new album coming out soon. That album comes out for me when we're recording this Friday, so I'll be talking about it on next week's episode, and I'm still very excited. I was hoping that this would kind of work out where we were recording after I'd heard that album, but it's fine. I'll talk about it next week too. So spoiler alert, that's what you'll get to hear about on next week's episode. Moving on to track number 2, Gloria. This is one of their first songs that they wrote. Now, here's the fun part. I was fully prepared to say that this was my favorite song because I thought it was on my first listen, and it's very close to being a perfect pop song. I think it has the best chorus on the album. It's so catchy, and this song feels like a blueprint for synthwave music. And then also this version is sometimes called pop wave because it's heavily influenced by pop, and sometimes synthwave purists like it to be instrumental. So I don't know. I'm very much of the mind that you can do whatever you want on the song as long as it sounds good. And I think this is a song that sounds great. As is the case with most synthwave music, this is a 10 out of 10 night driving song. It is the perfect amount of pumping bass, a faster tempo, catchy and easy to remember chorus. And then you also have the little flourishes of the synth or guitar solo bridge. I don't really know what instrument it is. I assume it's a synth. And I think that kind of puts it over the edge of this is just an amazing song to listen to at night. And then to top it all off, you have the return of the first verse as the outro, which ties it back together. This would be a 5 out of 5 if it wasn't for the little key change in the bridge. And I have to stay consistent to my feelings on key changes, especially when the key changes back to the original key. That is unfortunately a pet peeve of mine. So this song, if we were rating this on Album of the Year, it'd be a 98 out of 100. Unfortunately, for me to give a song a 5, it has to be absolutely perfect, and I wouldn't change anything about it. There's a very slight thing that I would change about this song, so it is a 4.5.
It's ironic because I feel like this is one of the lower songs for me. That being said, I still liked it. And I don't have much to say. I do feel like it's not as catchy as the year's /intro or whatever you want to call it. I'm sorry, the year's prologue. And also the vocals themselves are not my favorite. I feel like there's some like digital manipulation going on, which everyone kind of knows that I'm not the biggest fan of. That being said, I like the production itself a lot. It kind of made me think of the 80s, even though I don't think it's like overly 80s. I think that was just my brain.
In a way it is, though. The synthesizers they use as well are very common in the 80s. I don't remember all of the different types they use, but it is very much influenced by that like era of music and that approach to making music.
This is a 3.5, so I did still enjoy listening to this, and it's nice. And I think that will tell you the lowest score I go on this album, which is a good sign.
I will say this song grew on me a lot from the first time I heard it. I thought it was good. And then the more I listened to it, I was like, actually, this is really like great, close to amazing. And then I was like, actually, this is probably going to be my favorite song on the album. And then it wasn't. Surprise, surprise. And it what literally the first time I listened to this, I wrote it down as a 4.5 and I was like, this is amazing. And I had the years at a 4.5. Then I listened to it again and I was like, oh my God. Track number 3, We Move Forward, the 8-minute banger. I completely forgot about the intro of this song and how it's basically just like 2010s progressive house music. It is kind of crazy how much of an EDM influence is on this song that I didn't even like realize. Like obviously synthwave is part of electronic music, but it also kind of exists in this separate space. Once again, I said talk about a great night driving song. And then I wanted to do a little fun timestamp for you. We don't get the chorus in this song until 2 minutes and 54 seconds into the song, which might be an uncultured pop culture record. And you know what? I think it's deserved. It does not feel like too long of an intro or a first verse. As a whole, the song feels like 2 minutes compared to Prince, in my opinion. And you got to have a long ass outro. And you know I will eat that up, especially if it has a piano in it.
I knew you would like that.
Yes, and I have to say, this is not a step down. This is an amazing song, but because of how much I love the first 2 songs, my score will feel like it is a step down. It's a 4, but I have to differentiate somehow, you know?
And that's still a good score, especially for you.
Exactly.
The first thing I wanted to say is not only did this remind me of Blade Runner, but it also reminded me of Tron Legacy, which is another little callback. Which I guess makes kind of sense.
Yeah, and Tron Legacy is also heavily influenced by synthwave, so that's a great call.
That's probably why, yeah. Again, I don't think the production for me is as strong as the years, but it's still really fun. I think for me, ultimately, what didn't work, because the production itself, when it's just the synth, and the instruments and all that part is really, really strong. The parts that didn't work for me were when it kind of slowed down and the vocals came in. I felt like it was constantly like picking up then slowing down again. That being said, it's still a 3.5. I still really enjoyed this, but it doesn't feel as strong as the years, which I mean makes sense. That's my favorite song. I do wonder if this one will also grow on me if I listen to it, kind of like how you said Gloria would. Because I know that these are the 2 songs that, they had written before this EP, right?
And I want to say something about your note of picking up and slowing down. We haven't listened to a lot of EDM on here. I don't think you're very well versed in EDM, especially not as much as I am. I'm pretty deep in the trenches of it. EDM, a lot of the times, a lot of the more like commercial genres, a lot of house genres are all about building up and creating expectations, breaking them, and then trying to like subvert them again, even though it's all very like formulaic and it's pretty much slow, build up, big. A lot of the times artists will put in that like slow build up to something a little bit bigger, a little bit more like interesting, and build up again to something bigger, and you kind of keep going. So a lot of that follows the lines, I guess, the logic of progressive house, which I think is a great genre. One of my favorites is it is very melodic, which I'm a big melody person. And it also is pretty long generally because you have to build up. It progresses as it goes on, much like progressive rock or any of the other genres. So I think that is something that you will learn to understand as like a convention of the genre. You might not like it, and I'm not saying that you should or anything. I'm not like making any judgment, but I think you'll start to hear it as we listen to more electronic music and you'll say, okay, that makes sense. I get why they did that. Track number 4, Days of Thunder. Oh yeah, it's saxophone time. And I want to say, saxophone is by Thomas Edinger. I don't know if that's how you say his name. My apologies, because I assume it's German or Danish, and you never know. I only have one little note for this. It's a nice song, and it doesn't do a ton for me. This is a 3.5. We've gone down by 0.5 in every song on the first 4, just interestingly. This is the lowest I go. I guess I would say this is my least favorite songs, or like least favorite song on the EP, but like I didn't really choose.
The first thing I want to say is I liked the use of diegetic sound, like the rain, and I think it was a person in a car or something like that. I'm not sure though.
Yeah, it's like you're getting ready to go on your night drive and it's raining out, almost like Blade Runner.
Exactly. Gee, who would have thought? which I do really like. As someone that loves rain, probably because I grew up in Los Angeles where we have like
A few days.
4 days of rain.
Unless you're
Yeah.
living in the year 2019 where it's raining all the time and there's a bunch of Japanese people for no apparent reason.
Exactly. But I do agree with you on the song. I think that, again, the vocals are the weakest part of it for me, even though I still like it, and the production feels stronger to me than the vocals. That being said, it's still a 3.5. I found that, my views on all the songs, with the years being the exception, were very similar. Like I feel like they didn't like dip down or dip up in quality by like giant margins or anything. It was very, very consistent, which I do like. I feel like when you're driving, you could put on the whole album and just be like bopping along the whole time and never be like, oh, I want to skip this song, or like, oh, it's taking me out of the mood or something, which I think is a nice feature of the album.
One of the hacks for driving in Los Angeles, which is one of the worst like places I've ever driven,
Yes.
and takes the most amount of time to go places, is having good driving music.
Yep.
And music that you specifically associate with driving. So I listened to a lot of the midnight when I was driving, especially late at night.
Yes.
Great night driving music.
Which I will say, night driving is the most fun driving there is in Los Angeles. And not just because stuff is freer. Yeah.
Track number 5, Kick Drums and Red Wine. We have a synth solo on the song by Oliver McEwen. I'm assuming that is his brother, but I don't know for sure, so I can't tell you anything. This is one of the songs I associate most with the EP for some reason. And like I said before, an absolute banger for night driving. This, weirdly, might be the only song on the EP that feels a little bit too long, in my opinion. I like the length of a lot of songs, but this one, for some reason, I was just kind of like, okay, I can kind of get it now. But I still like it. It's a 3.5. This is still an all-time night driving song.
That's interesting because I feel like this is one of the songs where I didn't notice it as much. That being said, I did notice the synth solo, which I did really like. I didn't realize it was a solo, so what I just wrote was especially synthy, which sounds kind of dirty, but anyways, I feel like this song also has those sections where it will slow down, when the vocals come in. But here it worked better for me. And I think maybe it's because of the kick drums. I guess I like kick drums. They really worked for me here. This is a 3.5. We finally reached agreement.
We did last song too, right?
Oh, wait, that's true. We did.
Yeah, I forgot to even mention it in the moment.
Exactly.
I'm too busy thinking about what I'm going to say next about the final song on our EP/album, track number 6, Los Angeles. Just like the first two songs, it captures a melancholic nostalgia that only a few artists, I think, can do successfully. To me, this song is like a postcard from the City of Angels by The Night Game, to bring them up again. That song is more literal about its dislike, I guess, for lack of a better word, of Los Angeles. And this song feels more like a breakup that you can look back upon fondly. This feels like a song that you listen to when you're driving away from Los Angeles at night.
I can see that.
I've said a lot of praise about the first two songs specifically. I think this song might have the best lyrics on the EP. I think they work perfectly.
Oh.
And I wrote down a few of them. The gold silhouette, you take off your clothes, and my heart feels the weight of all I don't know.
That's pretty good. Yeah, pretty damn good.
Helicopters against the moonlight, our holy mother of the midnight, and if we live forever, let us live forever tonight. Perfectly captures 80s vibe, perfectly captures pop music and the kind of like vague, we're going to live forever, we're young forever. But then it also captures like a sadness of like, with the music working together. I think this is a beautiful song.
It also captures Los Angeles perfectly.
Yes, there's a lot of references. There's so many that I didn't even write them all down because I was like, you have to like experience it almost. A lot of artists like to write about LA and about what it means to them, usually at like a shallow surface level. And I feel like we've kind of been spoiled with obviously the Night Game song, which kind of takes this like shallow look at everything, but it's so much deeper because the song is about how everyone's shallow.
Pulling up a mirror to other people's shallow look at Los Angeles in a way.
Exactly. And then you have this song, which is kind of just the nostalgia of like movies, I guess. And like, it almost feels like R.I.P. Hollywood in a way. Like,
How fitting.
yeah, I mean, this is the week that people are bidding over signing an AI actress to be represented. It's like, where are we going? What's the future? But we have this kind of like looking back at the past to make us feel okay. This song is a 4.5. I love it, and it's a beautiful closer to the EP.
I agree. And that was honestly my main note for the song. First of all, I did gotta throw out that this is my favorite title, not just because the title is Los Angeles. I think this was the perfect way to end the album with this sort of calmer in terms of like the production itself, tone, and the nostalgia that it kind of gives you, especially if you know Los Angeles, and especially if you've had the experience of like driving out of Los Angeles, even if it's like for a short trip or something. I think it does work really, really well as the ending to the whole album. It's still a 3.5 for me, but it is a very high 3.5, and this might be my second favorite song on the whole album.
This should be a 4. I'm going to lobby for that real quick.
It might go up to a 4. We'll see.
I don't know. I don't really have anything else to say other than this could be.
It's just really good.
Like, the Years could be the first song of their career, and Los Angeles could have been the last, and I would put them like in the top 10 artists of all time. Like,
damn,
these are incredible songs.
Right.
Anyone who thinks that like synthwave is kind of like gimmicky or whatever, listen to these songs. Tell me that you don't feel something. I will not believe you. And I did want to say something about synthwave before we kind of wrap up and get our overall thoughts on the EP/album. Synthwave kind of did have a big breakout moment in 2019, and that song was called Blinding Lights by The Weeknd.
Oh, God.
You may have heard of it.
That's a synthwave?
It has a lot of synthwave elements in it, to the point where you almost get more 80s nostalgia than just like an 80s pop song.
Yeah,
and
I see
you
that.
have that faster tempo. You have kind of like a driving low end, I guess, to the song. And then a synthesizer that is playing a melody, which apparently no one knows how to make melody anymore in pop music, which is something that forever like will baffle me. And I hope that we kind of swing back around to people caring about melody, because that's my favorite part about music.
Same.
Is what can happen outside of the voice to complement the voice and the lyrics and the story.
Exactly.
I don't know. I can hypothesize whatever. And I feel like The Weeknd's Blinding Lights is such a big song because it captures this nostalgia, but then also has that melodic element that you don't really get in a lot of modern pop songs, which is really sad.
Yeah, I completely agree.
That was kind of like the big moment of synthwave and when everybody cared about it. And then since then, no one's really done a lot. I mean, I don't listen to a lot of synthwave. I mostly just listen to the Midnight because I think they're so amazing that I almost don't want to listen to other artists because I don't think they're going
to ruin it for you.
Yeah, I mean, I am super excited for this album that's coming out next week. And I want to get your thoughts of this album/EP overall and kind of what you thought about your first introduction into synthwave.
I liked it. In terms of where it stands kind of among the subgenres of EDM, I do think that it does stand lower than house music, but it's still definitely up there, and it's very easy for me to get into, kind of in a similar way that house was very easy for me to get into, which just makes me think that I that I will like most of the EDM genres in general, because so far it's kind of like 2 out of 2.
We'll have to see about dubstep once we get there, because
that might be the one that kind of I strike out on. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, some could argue hyperpop is an offshoot of EDM. I would say it's more pop, but it is like experimental, and that was a failure, I would say. But yeah, you never know. Maybe someday.
Yeah, you never know. That being said, I think that this is a very strong album. I know literally almost every single one of my songs was 3.5, but that's still a solid score. I feel like this album is the type of album where I could put on any of the songs and still enjoy them. Obviously, I would enjoy The Years the most, but they're all at a certain level where I would love to like re-listen to them. I would love to put them on when I'm in the car. And I think that speaks to the strength of the album, even if in general, like I was like, oh yeah, they're pretty good instead of, oh yeah, they're amazing. And I think that speaks to just how good the Midnight is at songwriting and producing. I was thinking of putting it at a 3.5 and at a 4. Like I was in between those two. I'm still kind of stuck because technically it is a 3.5. If you kind of look at the average score, considering that 5 out of 6 were at 3.5. But I am also like,
I mean, there's something to be said about an album being the sum of its parts. And I feel like,
and being that cohesive.
right, exactly. That's what I was going to say.
And that's kind of why I am like eyeing a 4. And I think I might just give it a 4 because I feel like it is deserving of that. Even if, I gave 5 out of the 6 songs a 3.5. So I think I'm going to do that. This is a 4. This is a good album. I really like it.
Well, I will tell you, this is also a 4 for me.
Hell
And
yeah.
that may seem a little low, but I'm going to say, I think this is a great EP. And I think it is not even the best of the Midnight. And I think they have multiple albums that are 4.5s.
Ooh, that's exciting.
And who knows about this one that's coming out? That might also be a 4.5, maybe even a 5.
Might be the album of the year.
Exactly. Yeah. The way I think about scoring things, though, is it's 0.5 to 4.5. And then 5 is for the truly special things that like transcend just being amazing. It's like this is
Right.
life changing. So to me, a 4 is like the second highest score you can have. And I think that they have 2 albums that I know off the top of my head are 4.5s. And I think another one might be able to get up there. So we shall see, because I want to do them again, and we're gonna have to do some more like 80s style movies, even if they're not from the 80s, that are like this. I don't know. I love this genre. I kind of thought going into it, this would be your favorite album of Halloween month and kind of the latter half of this year, because I think it's so well done. And based on what you've said about electronic music, I feel like I can kind of start to get you more into it almost.
I'm ready. Let's do it.
But yeah, I think this is a great EP album, whatever you want to call it. Amazing duo / group, whatever you want to call it. I highly recommend listening to this. And I feel like, I chose this because we were going to watch Blade Runner. And I was like, you have to do synthwave. And I thought, why not start at the beginning? I was going to do my favorite album by them, but then I was like, let's start at the beginning. And at the time, this EP was bolded on Rate Your Music, which means it's in the top, 7,000 releases of all time. It has since fallen out. And now their second EP is rated higher.
That's awesome.
Which is kind of interesting.
That's really cool.
But yeah, I'm glad that other people also like this, because a lot of the times the music that I like is like, I brought it up on one episode where one of my 5 out of 5 albums, somebody said, if you like this, you should kill yourself. So,
oh gosh, I remember that.
Yeah, I may not always have taste that people enjoy, but I hope that everyone's able to enjoy this and appreciate it. And I hope that this score only grows higher for you. And I hope you also will listen to Los Angeles again, which kind of brings me into my last question before we get into the movie. Are you going to be listening to any of these songs again? Are you going to be listening to this album again? Or if you are, how are you going to integrate it? Are you going to listen to this while night driving? Are you going to listen to this while writing? Because that's another great use for this music.
Yeah, so I will definitely be coming back to this album, and I feel like I will be coming back to it as an album, because it really is perfect for like putting on and just letting it like play. I honestly was thinking about, hey, I should get into a car and start driving and listening to this. So I will definitely like at least try that, if not just do it a lot. I've also been feeling like I'm running out of stuff to write to, and I feel like this could work. I feel like I just need to find the right project for it, because all the ones I'm working on don't fit. But if I do find one, I feel like I would definitely be using this.
And like I said, there are instrumentals of a lot of the songs. I can't remember if this one has an instrumental version, but a lot of their albums do have instrumental versions, because they very much value like production as well.
Which makes me so happy, because that's literally my favorite part. So yeah.
So I think you will like this band a lot. I'm excited for the album. They really have only released like one song that I was like,
Damn, that's really good.
It's incredibly consistent. There was one album, their previous album to the one that's coming out at the end of this week had a lot more like 80s pop influences on it. And if you like that kind of stuff, I mean, I like 80s music, but I think we make 80s music better now than we did in the 80s. So I'm going to listen to modern 80s music. And I think that they did a great job capturing kind of the sound of that era, but then making it like actually good and listenable. But anyway, that's kind of where we leave it this week. So anyone who has not listened to this album/EP, I highly recommend you do that right now. And I hope you enjoy it.
I hope you enjoyed as much as we did.
Yeah, spreading the gospel about melody and melodic music.
Finally, we really need that.
We really do. Now it's your turn to spread the gospel about Ridley Scott and I assume Harvey Weinstein too.
A little bit. He will honestly come towards the very end, but...
Don't say he will come towards the end, please. Thank you.
Oh, God. Okay. He will arrive at the end. That's also... Okay, wait.
He'll show up at the end. Oh, that's
appear?
Also pretty bad.
Okay, that's... Literally all of them are bad when it comes to
Yeah.
Harvey Weinstein will be in the notes.
Okay.
That sounds bad.
Yeah.
But now, well, in any case, it's time to talk about Blade Runner and spread the gospel about what it means to be human, pretty much.
True.
As usual, going to start off with the IMDb logline, and I want to know what you think. Here goes. A Blade Runner must pursue and terminate 4 replicants who stole a ship in space and have returned to Earth to find their creator.
Yeah, I mean, that tells you everything that supposedly happens in the movie. Most of it does not actually happen in the movie and is just kind of text at the beginning of the movie, but I'll take it.
Yes. The first part, up to 4 replicants, happens in the movie. The rest doesn't. Now, we won't discuss why it's like that specifically, but just the drama that we're going to be discussing in a second will maybe give you an idea of why the film is the way that it is and why there are so many freaking versions of it, which I will break down the versions for you. So don't worry. But first we got to do the credits. The film is obviously directed by Sir Ridley Scott. Yes, he's a sir. Produced by Michael Dealey. Written by Hampton Fancher. And if I say Fincher instead of Fancher, I apologize. And David Peoples. Adapted from the novel... Are you ready for this? Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick.
Amen.
Amen.
Never read it, but learning about science fiction writing, people talk about Philip K. Dick all the time as being a legend.
That's right. And honestly, I know people might find it weird, but I like the original title too.
It is honestly a great title.
There's something captivating about it.
I almost like it better than Blade Runner. Blade Runner like sounds cooler in theory, but I think Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep fits the movie weirdly a little bit better.
It goes hard. And I will say where the title comes from, and it does fit quite a bit. Here's the freaking word I hate. Cinematography by Jordan Cronenwith. Got it out of the way. Edited by Terry Rawlings and Marcia Nakashima. Music, of course, by Vangelis, and starring Harrison Ford, Rutger Hauer, Sean Young, Edward James Olmos, amongst others. Now, we were just talking about the title of the book, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick, and that comes from the fact that in the novel, Deckard, who was married, has a synthetic sheep, an electric sheep, because in the world of Blade Runner, most of the animals have been killed. And he dreams about one day being able to give his wife a real sheep instead of an electric one. So that's where that comes from. And there are like quite a few things in the novel that are different to the final film. However, the main narrative thread is the same. You have Rick Deckard who goes and hunts the replicants. That being said, the word replicant and Blade Runner never once appear in the novel. Now, of course, Hollywood, has to come and buy every book to turn it into IP. They come knocking, as usual. Eventually, Hampton Fancher, who was a writer and director, gets the rights and writes an adaptation, bringing on Michael Dealey as a producer. And he right away starts to try and find a different title because, and I get it, the title of the book is very long and probably wouldn't work as well for a film.
They're trying not to do a Charlie Kaufman and make it fall off the marquee. Yeah,
exactly. And I did want to get your opinion on some of the alternate titles. One of them was Android.
Sure, whatever. I don't care.
There was Machismo, which I don't know what that has to do with anything.
No, that's terrible. I think it's supposed to be like machine, but like it's not even like a good pun.
Exactly. And my favorite, but for all the wrong reasons, Dangerous Days.
Oh, what?
Yes, which just sounds like I don't know, like a pulp novel.
I will say that I wouldn't call any of the scenes in this movie a day, even though it is like technically daytime. It's like, is it though? It's so dark. Like it doesn't feel like day. It feels like a kind of an eternal like evening, dusk almost.
And oh boy, will we be talking about that. Now, Philip K. Dick read the first script, or not the first draft, but one of the earlier drafts, and he actually hated it to the point that he like denounced it in an article and sent it to their production offices. They just carried on though and approached Sir Ridley Scott. Now, he had broken out with Alien, a movie that we will have to watch at some point because it is a really good film. And not to spoil it, but it's better than this film. Sorry. But he was busy working on Dune, on an adaptation of Dune. That movie quickly became a shit show though. So he came on board, and of course, David Lynch directed that film, and it's not a very good film. I'm sorry, David Lynch. I love you so much. I wish you were alive so I could have met you. Anyway, back to the film. And so Ridley Scott came on board. The film quickly started to take up a lot of time as Fancher kept on writing and rewriting the script, as Scott came up with more and more ideas and things he wanted to change. Scott was also kind of worried that Fancher's writing was a little bit too cerebral. So eventually, David Peoples was asked to step in. And this did make Fancher upset, even though he did say that the changes that Peoples made were good. Peoples, on the other hand, loved Fancher's work, and he thought that it didn't even need to be changed, but he agreed to kind of make it more grounded, which I feel like you can see in some ways maybe when you're on the street and it's, those elements. Now, neither Scott or Peoples had actually read the original novel. And when Peoples asked Scott if he should, Scott told him, don't bother, because he felt that the spirit of the book was already in Fancher's work. So they kind of had the spirit down.
What the hell?
They never read the book. And
oh my God.
I believe
if I was Philip K. Dick, I would have like lost my shit and like threatened to blow up the studio or something. That's insane.
It was insane. And I believe up to this point, David Peoples has never actually read the original novel. So
ridiculous.
Thankfully, things did end on a better note when it comes to Philip K. Dick's feelings on the film, but we'll get there. Now you might be wondering, where the hell did Blade Runner come from? Well, Fancher came across a totally unrelated movie treatment called The Blade Runner by William S. Burroughs, adapted from a totally unrelated novel of the same name by Alan E. Nourse. So they bought the rights for the treatment just so they could use the title. And that's how the film became Blade Runner.
That's insane. Oh
literally
my God.
Just for the title.
Did anything ever happen with the book? Like, did it get adapted into anything?
I don't believe so. Not that I know of.
That sucks.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously I didn't read it and I have no idea what it is. I'm learning about this now for the first time, but it's like,
but still
I don't know
sucks.
If there's a good story, it's still like, it hurts a little bit,
Yeah, no, I agree. I kind of feel bad for Alan E. Nourse. With that, though, let's talk about casting Rick Deckard. Because the first choice was a little bit different. And this actor is actually a callback to a previous film we've discussed, a film that we both really liked. I wonder if you can guess who it was with those hints.
That makes me think Dustin Hoffman.
Yes.
Really?
Damn, I was not expecting you to get that, but yes,
I was not expecting that either. I was just like, oh my God, we both liked it. That was the first thing that came to my mind. First name I could think of.
Right? It's kind of crazy. I did not expect that, but he was Scott's first choice. And he was also surprised the way we were that they asked him to play such a macho character. Ultimately, he didn't come on board because he wanted to change the character and make it totally different, which is very Dustin Hoffman. So this obviously led Scott to Harrison Ford. And he had, of course, already done Star Wars and Raiders of the Lost Ark, so he was a name. He was well known. And he came on board with one caveat. He did not want to do voiceover. He did not want there to be a narration. And I actually have a quote here. When we started shooting, it had been tacitly agreed that the version of the film that we had agreed upon was the version without voiceover narration, end quote. So there was an agreement, but there was nothing in writing. And Scott had actually been considering narration, but he had wanted it to use it more as a stylistic element, more like music than, exposition. But of course he agreed, and they abandoned the idea and decided to do it without narration. Remember that point, because it will come back. For the role of Roy Batty, Scott saw Rutger Hauer in Paul Verhoeven's Dutch language films. Rutger Hauer is also Dutch, and was immediately impressed. The first time he met Hauer, though, Hauer came wearing huge green sunglasses, pink satin pants, and a white sweater with a fox on the front, which caused Scott to turn white. This was a practical joke because Rutger Hauer is a crazy, amazing person from all accounts. It sounds like he's very fun in life, which I feel like you can see in the performance.
Big shout out to the Netherlands.
Now, for the role of Rachel, there was a big disagreement between Scott and the casting director, Jane Feinberg, because while Scott wanted Sean Young, Jane Feinberg wanted Nina Azzelrod because she feared that Young would not be up for the role due to inexperience. Scott, of course, as we know, won out, but this maybe was fueled by something else, which we will talk about later too.
Oh God, I'm thinking affair.
Not an affair, but something kind of close. We'll get there, don't worry. So the cast is in place and they're getting ready to go into production. And then, of course, there's financial trouble. Now, they had been plagued by this. By the way, this is like 0.5% of the problems of this film, by the way. Everything that we talked about. And it's already that much. So, yes. Now they were hit by financial struggles. They had already been going through some stuff because their first financier, CBS Films, had already dropped out. And had been replaced by Filmway Pictures, and now Filmway Pictures pulled out. So the producer, Michael Dealey, literally had to figure out this jigsaw pile of financiers that was made up of Tandem Pictures, the Lat Company, and a Hong Kong producer, Sir Run Run Shaw. And with this kind of jigsaw assortment, they were able to get a $22 million budget. But there was one important caveat. Tandem Pictures, who was the guarantee for completion, they were going to make sure that the film was finished, stipulated that if the film went over its budget by more than 10%, they would assume artistic control. This is very important. Remember this fact.
I have an idea of why this matters.
Yep. But now, after the crazy production went by smoothly, right? Well, let me tell you about the first day. Scott walks onto set. They're shooting the scenes in Dr. Eldon Tyrell's office with the giant pillars and the beautiful view. And Scott walks onto set and realizes that the columns have been installed upside down. Now, Scott was a perfectionist, or is a perfectionist. Sorry, he's still alive. And he would not shoot until they halted everything and turned every single column upside down, delaying the whole day for hours. I believe, the person in charge of changing the columns literally told the assistant director, come back at 12. So like half the day later. And in general, Scott did not get along with the crew. Now, because of union requirements, Scott could not bring his typical British crew, who seemed to kind of follow him without question and would always answer, his orders with "Yes, Governor," and instead had to use an American crew for the first time, who seemed like maybe pushed back on his choices here and there or offered suggestions, which it seemed like maybe he wasn't very open to. He was also used to operating the camera himself, which was not allowed due to union rules again, and that kind of caused some conflict between him and the camera department. The crew, in turn, didn't enjoy working with Scott because he, to them, or at least they felt, that he was cold and distant, and also because of his perfectionist.
Typical British person.
Exactly. That's what all the British are like, right? Anyways.
Sorry. That's what the British men auteur directors are like. They're all like, they all fit the same personality. It's like, God, that would suck to be around for any amount of time, actually.
We're only going to find out more stuff that will show you how much it sucked to be around. And I think a large part of that is because he was a perfectionist or is a perfectionist. Sorry, I don't mean to keep on saying was. He's alive.
Well, who knows? We might kill him when this episode comes out.
That's true. That's not the first time, so.
Still can't get Harvey, though.
Rest in peace, Robert Redford, yeah. Now, Scott's perfectionism was so bad that 2 weeks into shooting, he decided he didn't like the lighting for anything that they had shot so far. So they reshot everything from scratch. So 2 weeks into production, they were 2 weeks behind pretty much.
That's beautiful. Just amazing. Yes. So you're already crazy. 4 weeks net off schedule.
And the thing is, if anyone was like, oh my God, why are you like this? He was like, oh, but that's why I was hired, because I am like this. Which, I mean, I don't know, it's kind of crazy. It got to the point where the crew started calling the film Blood Runner.
How does the crew always comes up with like these terrible puns that really aren't that funny, but like in the moment, that's got to be like, wow, this feels amazing. My boss sucks.
I honestly don't know. I would love to find out by just being on a bad set. Well, I don't want to be on a bad set, but like just seeing it from the side.
Yeah. Manifesting a bad set for you.
Thank you so much. There were other issues. It wasn't just his perfectionism. Another problem was that literally everything was changing. The sets were always changing. The costumes were always changing. And the story itself was always changing because they didn't have a solidified script. David Peoples was rewriting it to production, and the changes were happening so fast that typically when he would turn a rewrite in, it was already obsolete. So that's how fast things were changing on set, which is like a hell environment. And it was only made worse by, and this is something that you mentioned, the fact that the film mostly takes place in the dark, aka the night. So most of the film that was shot outside on location was shot during the night and under torrential rain from rain machines. I have a little quote here from Scott, which will maybe explain why production got pushed back even further. Quote, everyone gets exhausted after lunch, which is 1 o'clock in the morning. And I think after 1 o'clock in the morning, I don't care who it is, you get 40%. Everyone is going down, end quote. So pretty much the whole crew is working at 40% because they're freaking exhausted. So of course your days are going to go, longer, or not longer, but they're going to go slower.
Poorly. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Stuff got so bad that the t-shirt wars broke out. Yes, there was a war on set with t-shirts. And it all started out when Scott mentioned in an article for the British press that he preferred working with the British crew because of the way that they followed his orders and said, yes, Governor. Of course, the American crew heard this, specifically makeup supervisor Marvin Westmore, and he became angry. So he printed shirts that read, yes, Governor, my ass, and spread them throughout the crew.
Hell yeah, let's go.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Also,
I love it.
I would be remiss if I did not mention during the T-shirt wars segment that David is wearing the iconic T-shirt, yes. You're Killing Me Smalls today, of course.
That's right.
And also, we talked about this before we started recording. He did not try to do this. This is just a thing now, I think.
Yes. I went literally to all my shirts and grabbed a random one, and it was this. So it was totally random. Back to the 80s T-shirt wars. Scott saw the shirts and in return printed a shirt that said, xenophobia sucks. and then started wearing a hat that read Gov. And he maintains that the reason he did this was to ease tension because he thought that xenophobia would confuse people because they wouldn't know the word. And it honestly seemed to have kind of worked.
Xenophobia against British people.
Yes, which is
very funny.
The most ironic thing ever.
Yeah.
But it did seem to ease tensions a little bit. I did also want to say that it does feel like Scott did have respect for DP Jordan Cronenweth. And a part of this was not only was he a very influential cinematographer, but he had just started to suffer from Parkinson's. That would eventually kill him a decade later. But in spite of the fact that, he was very weak and his body was shaking, he was a trooper and he would, work the long hours, even if it was during the night, doing whatever he could to get through the production. So I wanted to shout out him and say that respect, pretty much. Now, things were terrible for the crew and the relationship between them and Scott, but things had to have been better for the actors, right?
I already know the answer is no.
Yeah, because Harrison Ford and Scott had a difficult relationship on set. And a large part of that seemed to be that Scott is not the director who will give his actor notes. Ford had literally just worked with Spielberg, who is very known for working with his actors a lot, being very in-depth with them, working with them to create the characters. And so Ford seemed to kind of go through whiplash when he got to the set of Blade Runner and kind of ran into Scott's approach, which was kind of a lack of one because he was mainly focused on the sets and the camera imagery. As Scott said, Ford was a professional actor who didn't need notes.
That's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard.
Yes. Now, there is, of course, this theory of if you cast the right actor, you won't have to give them notes. But even then, not everyone is the actor doesn't know your specific vision. So I think at any point you're going to have to give them some sort of note.
Even then, you are their boss. You have to also do your job,
Yeah.
That is so stupid. It sounds like he just wanted to fuck around with the cameras and the lenses and say, oh, what if we shoot this at this amount of frames per second?
Yeah. I did also want to say that Scott also called Ford a pain in the arse, incidentally. So there's also
arse,
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not the greatest relationship for sure. That being said, Sean Young had problems with both Ford and Scott. So you kind of have this triangle of problems. It seems like there was kind of a chasm of connection or anything between Young and Ford. They reportedly hated each other to the point that the crew started calling their love scene the hate scene.
Once again, another great crew moment of just flipping the word entirely.
I love it. I think that's so much fun. And I mean, honestly, watching the scene,
fun.
it kind of feels like a hate scene, considering how it starts out, at least.
Well, yeah.
Just gonna toss that out there. Yeah. I'm not sure why they disliked each other. It might have just been the fact that the way that they worked as actors were different.
I mean, it also could have been that you show up to work every day and you have an awful boss that hates you and hates everything else that's going on. You're just like, wow, get me out of here. Nothing's good.
That's also true. Well, her relationship with Scott seemed to be even worse because she had turned down his romantic advances.
Oh.
And I have a little quote to pull up, and that is, quote, well, honestly, Ridley wanted me to date him. He tried very hard in the beginning of the show to date him, and I never would. I was like, nah. And then we do this scene, and I think it was Ridley. I think Ridley was like, fuck you. I was thinking, why did this have to be like that? What was the point of that? And I think it was Ridley's none too subtle message that he was getting even with me, end quote. So when filming a specific scene, it seemed like he was not being the greatest to her because of the fact that she had turned him down.
I assume that's the scene where Harrison Ford is being weird towards her in the hallway and then is like, tell me you love me or whatever he says.
I'm not 100% sure, but it could very well have been that scene. Pretty much everyone is having a terrible time, except for Rutger Hauer, because he was just having a lot of fun. He would drive himself to set. He was like, I don't need a chauffeur, I'll drive. He was improvising moments, because of how enthusiastic he was. And it does seem like he realized that this film and the role of Roy Batty was what he was going to be remembered for the most. which is true. And it does seem like it made him want to make it as good as he possibly could. And this included kind of his death monologue. Originally, the monologue was quite long in the script, and he told Scott that he couldn't perform it as it was. He felt it was hard to visualize, so he asked if he could rewrite it, and he did. And the version that you see in the final film was written by Rutger Hauer, and that includes the Tears in Rain line, which is the most famous line in the whole film, which he came up with at 4 a.m. the morning of the day they were shooting that.
Oh my God. It's like when you do your homework at the last possible second and you get an A, and it's like,
Exactly.
wow, maybe I am the greatest.
Except we're not that lucky to literally come up with like one of the most famous film lines like he did. He also came up with the idea of having the dove that he lets go with death. There was an issue though, because when they were filming that scene, the dove got so soaked that it couldn't fly. It could only hop out of his hand. So the shot of the dove flying, they had to like get later outside of like one of the film studio offices or something.
Poor bird.
Poor bird, I know. Just all that rain. I did want to throw out a couple of locations they shot out just for fun before we get to the real shit show of the film. The police offices were constructed at Union Station.
In LA, I assume.
Yes, in LA. And
Okay, yeah.
still remain there because they were just used as offices because the officials at Union Station were like, hey, we will give you a discount if you just make them permanent. So they did. And they're still there. You can go see them. Yeah, pretty fun. They also shot at the Bradbury building. That's the apartment where, the whole final like confrontation happens. And that was a very iconic building. It had been used in films a lot, but it had fell into disrepair. So literally, they did not have to change anything aside from dirtying up the floor. The rest of the house or the building was the way you see it in the film.
That's crazy.
Which is
talk about resourceful.
Really crazy. Yeah. Also talk about sad that, an iconic old building is like that. But that's
very sad, yeah.
Thing. I did want to briefly mention the effects. Scott worked with visual effects supervisor Douglas Trumbull and his company Entertainment Effects Group and concept artist Sid Mead to create the look of the film. He was inspired by the Edward Hopper painting Nighthawks and the artwork of Jean Mobius Giroux. And crazy enough, there are only 90 visual effects shots in the entire film. And those were all done with miniatures and matte paintings. Of course, there's no CGI. If you want to know more about matte paintings, I recommend you look it up. It's much too technical. I don't know much about it, but it's really cool. So production wraps up, and Scott and Michael Dealey are fired. Because, of course, the budget had ballooned to $30 million, well above the 10% above the original $22 million. So, Jerry Perenchio and Bud Yorking of 10 Productions took creative control of the film. Now, they did rehire Scott to come and kind of finish the edits and finish the visual effects, but they were still denying additional post-production shots and stuff like that. And they had final say. The first cut ran 4 hours. Everyone agreed, including Scott, that it was kind of convoluted and needed to be edited more to make it more cohesive as a film. And they did start to discuss voiceover. Now, again, Scott was like, I want to do voiceover that complements the film, a stylistic voiceover instead of voiceover that serves an expository function. And even though the producers seemed to want it to be more expository, they kind of relented and agreed Scott to bring in David Peoples to write the narration and let them have their own crack at it, pretty much. Now, the one person that seemed to be happy with what he saw, which was the opening 20 minutes of footage, was Philip K. Dick. And he even said that they captured his inner world perfectly. He would sadly die before any version of the film was completed, though, so he did not see the final theatrical version. Now, while, Perenchio and Yorking were okay with letting Scott try the narration by himself, they demanded a happy ending. They did not like the open-ended, original ending where you see Sean Young and Harrison Ford get into the elevator and that's it. And I think in this case, Scott did stay on and provide them with one because he was like, I'd rather let it be ruined as little as possible rather than, let them totally go crazy. And so he did provide them with a happy ending. Of course, he couldn't really shoot that much, so he came up with a great idea. He went to Stanley Kubrick, knowing that Stanley Kubrick shoots a lot of material for every single shot, and asked him if he had any footage from the opening of The Shining, which, if you don't know, the opening of Shining starts with pretty much footage of the snow-capped mountains of Colorado. So Scott was like, okay, Kubrick literally shoots a bajillion takes of every single one of his shots, so he's bound to have a bunch of extra footage, which Kubrick did. And he was like, yeah, you can use it as long as you don't use anything I used in The Shining itself. So the happier ending of the film includes footage from The Shining, which is kind of crazy. And of course, you hear in that version, Deckard explain that Rachel does not have a termination date and that they're going to live happily ever after, blah, blah, blah. So the ending had been changed. And Scott and Peoples took a crack at the narration, but Peranchio and Yorking were not satisfied. They wanted the narration to be clearer. Now, Ford was already annoyed that he had to do any sort of narration at all because he did not want to do it in the first place. But he got even more annoyed because they kept on changing the narration. So he kept on having to come back time and time again to record it and then re-record it and then re-record it. He has said that it was a nightmare. He was pretty much stuck doing it again and again, and he was stuck doing narration for people that did not represent Ridley Scott's idea of the film, aka the producers. And his feelings were very evident in the narration that he was giving, because his performance was very worn out and very enthusiastic, to the point that one of the producers gave the note, quote, "Were they all on drugs?" End quote. Which, hey, maybe they were. It was the 80s. Finally, Ford was able to finish the narration. And speaking about his last day, I did have a quote that I felt like was important to read to see just how crazy the process was. Quote, "Finally, I show up to do it for the last time, and there's this old Hollywood writer sitting there, pipe sticking out of his mouth, pounding away at this portable typewriter in one of the studios. I had never seen this guy before, so I stuck my head in and said, 'Hi, I'm Harrison Ford.' He kind of waves me off. He came to me to hand me his pages. To this day, I still don't remember who he was." End quote. They were bringing in screenwriters to try and fix it time and time again. It was not working. To the point that Harrison Ford was like, yeah, I don't even know who's giving me this dialogue. That's how crazy it was.
That's crazy. This might be the worst production and
yes.
Well, this might be the worst anything that we've done of any film.
I think so, because it was such a mess. And of course, the narration in the final theatrical version included the N-word, which is what?
Shout out. Gotta have it.
Shout out. You can go watch it on YouTube. Just look up Blade Runner narration. Now, there was one last chance to kind of save the film. There were focus groups set up, and the producers agreed to show Scott's version to one focus group and their version to the other. The problem is, the focus group, when they watched Scott's version, said that they didn't understand the full details of the film, to which Scott said, quote, "Well, that's the point of watching a goddamn movie," end quote. And that kind of cemented the coffin of his version. Of course, he is referring that, you should think more. If you want to understand the film, it shouldn't be spoon-fed, which I do agree with. I do wonder if maybe it was a little too convoluted. We'll get to that when we discuss the different versions. So the final version that was released is the theatrical cut. That includes the narration and the happy ending. It was released June 1982, and against the $30 million budget, it only grossed $41 million.
Wow. That is really bad.
Yes, I think partially because of the publicity, but a very big factor as to why it did so bad was it came out when E.T. came out, and E.T. was like literally became the highest grossing film of the year and of the world for a period. And it was a very like light and kind of kid friendly sci-fi movie versus Blade Runner, which is a very dark and dreary sci-fi movie in terms of its tone. So that certainly did not help its box office chances. On top of that, the reviews of it were mixed, not in small part due to the narration and the happy ending. Critics did note that there was a glimmer of light present in the film, noting the visuals and the fact that there was a lot of very, complex themes going on. That being said, everyone still noted that the human characters were underdeveloped and the story itself was kind of the weaker element of the film. And that was that because it seemed like there weren't any of Scott's versions left. People really thought that, okay, this is the theatrical cut is the final version, and those are the only prints that we have now. So we are literally stuck with the theatrical version forever, the one that nobody liked. But in 1989, Michael Eric, a sound preservationist, was digging through the Warner Brothers room of prints, and he stumbled upon a 70mm print of Blade Runner. And he's like, oh, they're doing a showing of 70mm films at the Cineplex Odeon Fairfax Theater in Los Angeles. I should take it to them and see if they want to show it. Wasn't the best received, but hey, it's still Blade Runner. So he takes it and they show it. And everyone sits down and is amazed to find that they're watching a totally different cut of the film than the version with the narration and the happy ending. This was one of the working prints, one of Scott's working prints that did not have narration and had the bleaker, more open-ended ending to the film. And the response was really freaking enthusiastic. The audience really loved it. They said, why does everyone say this is a bad film? This version is great. And all of that enthusiasm literally led to Warner Brothers releasing that version of the film into theaters and releasing it, on whatever version, VHS or whatever. And they released that as the director's cut. It should be noted, though, that, the work print that was shown was not finished. And because Warner Brothers didn't go back to Scott and tell him to finish it, they just released it as is. That version of the film is not wholly finished. It hasn't had its last tweaks done by Scott himself. So the director's cut of the film is not really the director's cut of the film. So Scott came back later, and this was in the early 2000s by this point. He came back and he fully finished it. He fully tweaked everything he wanted to tweak. He did whatever changes he wanted to do. And thus the final cut was reborn or put out there as the definitive version of the film. So that's why we have so many cuts. We have the theatrical cut, which is the botched first version. There's the international cut, which is the theatrical cut with more violence, pretty much. The European cut, you could say, because they love violence over there, I guess. The unfinished original cut that was released as the director's cut, even though it's not the director's cut. And finally, the actual director's cut, which is called the final cut. So that's why you have 4 cuts that are all like that everyone keeps confusing pretty much. With the final cut coming out and with the director's cut coming out before it, the film was kind of rediscovered and critically reevaluated. And it's become a cult classic. It's considered now to be one of the greatest and most influential science fiction films ever made, and particularly when it comes to its visuals and music. People study it, in particular, its themes, and the question of whether Rick Deckard is a replicant. Because yes, that's also a thing. I didn't know if you knew this, but Ridley Scott would later say that he always made the film with the intention that Deckard is a replicant, and that's why he dreams about a unicorn in the film. It should be noted that this view was opposed by Ford and Hauer who consider Deckard to be human. But that's a whole nother can of worms.
I mean, the one thing I will use to point to that as evidence is Harrison Ford's eye is kind of red one time in the scene when you're seeing the red eyes of the replicants.
Yes,
so,
which is,
maybe there's a little something there.
Yes, and I will say, when it comes to the sequel to Blade Runner, titled Blade Runner 2049, it was kind of put into canon that he is a replicant. So that film kind of canonized that element, even though a lot of people may still argue about whether he is a replicant when it comes to kind of the world of the first film. I will agree, though, you do see elements in the film, and I'm sure if I went back and kind of watched it more closely, that do point to him being a replicant. Of course, in spite of the film bombing, most people involved had great careers. Harrison Ford obviously continued on to, star in a lot of blockbusters. He is still a star, still releasing stuff. He was literally nominated for an Emmy this year. Sir Ridley Scott is, of course, still directing. He, I believe, is an Academy Award-winning director. Don't quote me on that. I could be wrong. But he has directed a lot of classic stuff like Gladiator, of course, multiple Alien films, although the later ones aren't really seen as classics. But anyways, of course, Rutger Hauer would be most remembered for his role in Blade Runner, which he kind of knew, and he did write the most famous line in the film. And he passed in 2019. May he rest in peace. That being said, and I know you've been waiting for this moment, Brandon, but the one person who did not have the happiest outcome was Sean Young. Now, she did continue to act in very successful movies through the 80s and 90s, but it seems like starting with Blade Runner and continuing on through her other films, she gained a reputation of being difficult to work with. Mainly, seemingly, because I don't want to obviously say that this is fact, but it does seem like this occurred because she would turn down advances from men, including Harvey Weinstein, and they did not like that she did this, so they dubbed her difficult to work with. And it got to the point that she kind of got blacklisted from Hollywood, which in a way prematurely ended her career, because the misogyny of Hollywood knows literally no bounds. So that's kind of the sad addendum to Blade Runner. Last thing we got to talk about, though, is, of course, that 35 years after the original film, a sequel did release, titled Blade Runner 2049, directed by Denis Villeneuve and starring Harrison Ford and Ryan Gosling. The film was, unlike its original when it first came out, critically acclaimed. And it's considered one of the best sci-fi films ever made, considered one of the best sequels ever made, and it did win Best Visual Effects and Cinematography at the 90th Academy Awards. And yet, ironically, just like its predecessor, it also bombed. On a budget of $150 to $185 million, it only made $276 million, which was not enough to recoup its budget. That being said, there is a TV series titled Blade Runner 2099 in the works that's set to premiere next year on Amazon Prime. So the story of Blade Runner is not over yet. And that's it. That's the end of the shit show as we know it.
Wow. What a journey.
And I wanted to ask, there's the obvious question of what did you know about the film? What did you know about Ridley Scott? Which, I will let you answer whenever you want, because I feel like there's something more important that I want to ask you first. Now, for the audience who doesn't know, I showed Brandon the narration and the happy ending before we started recording. I wanted to ask your opinions on those and comparing them to the version of the film that you saw, which was the final cut, I believe, right?
It was the final cut, yeah.
Yes.
Well, I want to start with saying I have seen this movie before.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
I watched it in a film class. And I had told you, I'm pretty sure I saw the theatrical cut because I didn't really like it and it didn't make much sense to me.
I see.
Turns out I actually did watch the final cut. And upon rewatching it, I was like, oh, wait, I do actually know everything that happened. And then when you sent these two other pieces, the narration and the theatrical cut, or the like theatrical ending. I was like, oh my God, yeah, I don't know what this is. I did not watch that.
Yeah.
So I actually did watch the original in film class when I was like 16 or 17 years old. So it's been a while. And what did I know about Ridley Scott? Basically nothing, except that I assumed he was British. And then I also confused him with Adam McKay for no reason. I don't know what happened there.
I find that to be very funny.
Yeah, I have no idea. There's some people that just blend together in my mind. And knowing nothing about either of them, I was kind of like, oh, that's the same person. Other than that, going into this, I kind of knew what I knew what I expected because I had watched it before. I kind of thought it would be different because I thought I had seen the theatrical cut, but I mostly I remembered more than I thought I would, pretty much.
Well, let me preface this maybe by another question. And this might maybe give away a little bit what I think of the film, but what do you think about the characters, specifically how they were developed, if they were developed?
Well, that's kind of a leading question that you're asking because they're not developed at all.
Yes.
And I think anyone with any amount of brain can get that when you are watching the movie and you're thinking, whoa, why do I care? Like straight up, what compels me to be invested in anything that's going on with these characters' lives? I mean, I kind of want you to talk about it as well, but from a writing standpoint, this is maybe like the second worst film that we've watched on here next to Megalopolis. And even then there was more characterization, I guess, of people. You kind of had a little bit more motivation.
I would not go that far, but my view of the film is definitely not kind of the big consensus that this film is one of the greatest film ever made. I think it's a solid film. I'm going to throw out my score. It is a 3.5. If not for the visuals and the score, it would be a 3. I feel like those things bump it up, first of all. But there are elements that I do like. I like the ideas present, and I like a lot of the execution of them. And I also really do love Rutger Hauer and his performance in this film. And in general, I find the replicants to be kind of interesting. That being said, I completely agree that no one is really developed. And the two people that are developed the least are Rick Deckard and Rachel. And they're the center of the film. And that's really why the film is at a 3.5 and a 3 without, the visuals and the music. Because, yeah, it doesn't give you that much to attach to. I think it still works in a way, but it doesn't really work fully. It doesn't keep you engaged to the end, especially when it's full of little weird scenes like him almost raping her before they have sex. Like it did kind of look like that, which is like, what?
That was, yeah.
Yes.
That's why I think that scene is the revenge scene.
I can totally see
it
that.
feels disgusting watching it. I was getting Dangerous Liaisons flashbacks.
But that's pretty much my view of the film. I think that there is a lot to like, but it's really, really hurt by just the total lack of development when it comes to, its main character and one of the main supporting characters. I mean, I think that Roy Batty, who also doesn't get that much development, I feel like that's kind of more just Rutger Hauer bringing a lot to the character. But I feel like Roy Batty has more development than Rick Deckard ever has. I feel like that fact does kind of make the themes of the film fall a little bit flat, because the theme is obviously who is more human.
That's what the theme is?
I feel like the theme is
I didn't get that at all. I mean, I believe you,
yeah.
But I think this film is so poorly written that you can't even tell what it's supposed to be saying.
Well, that's what, I feel like the theme is, one of the themes is, this machine, the replicant, is more human than the human Rick Deckard. That's one of the point of the film. But I feel like they didn't turn Rick Deckard into a character to show us how he is more of a machine than Roy Batty. I feel like that's the biggest issue with the film. And I feel like that's why that thing kind of falls flat for me, because I'm like, well, I don't see that. I get it, like in with his dying monologue, I get how they're like presenting it to you, but at the same time, I'm like, okay, but I don't feel it. And I think that's ultimately the biggest problem. This film doesn't really make me feel much. Even if it's nice to look at, even if I can like enjoy a lot of it, at the end of the day, I come away from it with, okay, that's my reaction. Just okay, moving on. Of course, as I said, I do bump it up to a 3.5 because of its visuals and music and because I can see what it did give to sci-fi. But ultimately, my reaction is just, okay, and that's it.
I want to talk about what it gave to sci-fi real quick because you said that, and I think this movie almost ruined sci-fi as a genre.
Really?
And I realized that my opinion may be much stronger than other people, but when I first watched this, I thought, what's the point of anything? Why did I watch this? This was stupid. And then I had to write a paper about it. And I was like, I don't care. There's no themes present. There's no character development. Nothing happens. And then also in that moment, I kind of realized, without like being consciously aware of it, that I think of movies as a writer and not as a director, because I don't really care what's happening on the screen. Sure, it's nice to look at nice things, but ultimately, I would much rather watch a movie with two people sitting in chairs talking to each other for an hour and a half than watch this. And that's just like, I care way more about story than anything else. And I think that this kind of set up sci-fi in a bad way, because sci-fi has a reputation of not having good stories, which I don't think is always true.
That is true.
But when I'm watching different genres of movie, I mean, the hit rate of them being good seems to be a lot lower in sci-fi.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh yeah, this movie's great because it's visually interesting, but like, what else happens?
And sci-fi definitely has that reputation. Yeah, for sure.
Like visually, yeah, this is nice to look at a lot of the times. I was not interested in any of the performances by any of the actors, not even our glorious Dutchman, because ultimately I couldn't care about his character because it was so poorly written that like nothing could really save it. I did want to mention the guy with the mustache and the like fedora. What is his point? Why does he exist? There's no reason for him to be in the story, and he shows up randomly and seems to be completely useless. It seems like when they were writing it, they completely forgot that there are supposed to be characters in the movie, and it's just like, oh my god, what if we took this cool shot and like showed it for a second? It's like, okay, who cares?
I will say for him, he is like another Blade Runner that's not as skilled as Deckard, but that's kind of the point of the end where he's like, oh, I'm giving you guys a chance to escape, but I'm gonna still like come after you.
Yeah, I mean,
which is what I always saw like the whole origami thing is signifying. I liked him in this. I like his character. It's not very present, but I did feel like it added something.
I am not a fan of like the text at the beginning of like setting up the story. I think if it feels like a cop out, even a little bit in Star Wars, it's kind of like, okay, even though they did it better. I wrote a paragraph that I'm just going to read word for word right after I finish this movie. I don't know if it makes sense. So I wrote, the whole time they were fighting on the rooftop, I was thinking to myself, this has got to be a crazy scene if you cared about anything that was going on. And I don't think it's my fault that I don't care about what's going on. It just seems like it was not set up to be interesting at all. It feels like this failure starts with the script, and nothing that you could have done would have saved it because the script is fundamentally bad. That kind of brings me back to what you said about Philip K. Dick hating this, and then also them not reading his book. Like, to me, there's no greater sin than not caring about the thing you're adapting.
Yeah.
And this, I mean, God, this is a failure on every level to me. This is almost worse than Megalopolis in some ways because of what it's supposed to be and what it's supposed to do. When you were explaining how they got the title of Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, I was like, these are two different pieces of work that don't even stand in the same like stratosphere of quality. And I've never even read the book, and I already know that it's amazing and way better than this.
Well, then we got to read the book.
We really do.
I will say, I wonder what your reaction to the sequel will be.
I've heard better things about the sequel, and I also think Denis Villeneuve is probably a better director and would probably care more about the script than Ridley Scott, but I can't say for sure.
Well, and what I remember of it, I did like the sequel a lot more, and I have consistently liked, or mostly liked Denis Villeneuve's films, especially when it comes to his character work. So that is a good sign. I personally don't remember the film very well because I watched it quite a long time ago, but
Yeah.
it would be interesting to see it. And I did want to say, I remember even when I saw it the first time, because the first time I watched it, I was kind of wrapped up in, oh, this is a classic. This is one of the, best films ever made. And you know how you get when you watch something like that and you're like, well, I have to give it a good score.
Yeah. I mean, I don't, but yeah, I get it.
Yeah. But I feel like, I was very young and very
Yeah.
malleable in that sense. Looking back now, I'm like, oh yeah, if I watch this for the first time now, I would still give it what I just gave it. But even back then, I firmly stood by the fact that this was definitely not Ridley Scott's best film, which is something that I feel like you will hear some people say. I think that Alien is a million times better than this film, and I think that's his actual best sci-fi film. And on top of that, I've always stood by the fact that the first film he ever made, The Duelists, is the best thing he ever made. Of course, I haven't seen everything that he directed, so that could change, but I feel pretty strongly that that will not change because that is genuinely one of my favorite films of all time. And Blade Runner is certainly not that. So
I would like to say about Blade Runner, I don't know Hampton Fancher's nationality, but we do have another British film that I think is really nothing good. So I mean, it's an interesting trend.
Fancher is American, but of course Ridley Scott is British. So maybe that's where the effect continues.
You did also kind of ask what would have changed between the Hollywood ending versus the ending that we actually watched. Nothing, in my opinion, changes because I think this is bad either way. And I think you just need to start at square one if you're gonna do this. Unfortunately, going into it, I think when we were planning out this episode too, I kind of said like, oh yeah, I watched Blade Runner. I did not like it. And you were like, well, maybe you'll like it this time. Like it's a new experience. And I think I actually liked it less than when I watched it first. I think I would have given it a 2 on when I first watched it. This is actually a 1.5 now. And the fact that it's a 1.5 is based on the music and the visuals, because this really should be like a 0.5.
Oh, wow.
This is one of the worst written things I've ever watched. And it's kind of insane that I hate it this much, but it's like, this is everything that I hate about movies. It's just the visuals and it solely exists for that. And that is not what I value in any way. Like I want a story. Now I want to experience a world, not just see something. It's like looking at pictures.
I will say when it does come to the ending, I will disagree because the ending is one of the elements that I do actually like. That being said, I am someone that does honestly really like ambiguous endings, and I think the fact that I do really like it does kind of make that work for me. Even though I agree, like if you actually cared about the characters, it would be a lot more. It would hit a lot harder. But I do still prefer that ending.
We talked about ambiguous endings and how I enjoy them as well. To me, it just didn't feel earned. It felt like everything in the movie was ambiguous because they didn't know what they were doing.
Which I can see, yeah.
I like the idea of the ending. I like the sentiment of they're going to go off and live and nobody knows how long they have. That's a good idea, but it doesn't feel earned in any way.
I do agree that it's not wholly earned, yeah.
I mean, yeah, I sound like a hater right now, and honestly, I kind of am, because this movie made me very upset when I was watching it.
Which, hey, we need haters of everything in my idea. Or
yeah, so I don't know. There's just something about this movie, and I feel like, I mean, I have no problem shitting on classics. I've been doing it this whole time we've been doing the podcast because I have my own opinions, and my own thoughts. So if you like this, I'm glad you do.
Yeah.
But I don't think, I mean, at least I haven't seen anyone saying that this is a good story. I think it comes down to what you value in a movie. And if you value visuals over everything, I think this is a great movie and you'll love it. If you value score over everything, I think this is a great movie and you'll love it. If you value story, this is one of the worst. And in my opinion, story is the most important thing, and I'm totally fine that other people don't agree with me. But to say this is one of the best movies ever, I think is kind of a stretch.
I do agree with the fact that this is definitely not one of the best movies ever made. I do totally agree with that. So I guess with that,
Yeah, with my rant.
after a very positive start and then a very negative ending.
I'm glad that this inspired synthwave music. I'm glad that it exists to kind of further the creation of other art. But this is one of those things where it's like, look at what it inspired. Don't look at it though. Like, just cast it aside. That's fine. We can live without it.
Look away, look away.
I'm
Yeah.
hoping 2049 is better. I mean, the main title theme of the movie, it gets used as like a TikTok audio all the time. So that's like my exposure to it. I didn't realize Ryan Gosling was in it at all. I didn't realize Harrison Ford was like canonically alive to be in the film, but
Yeah.
yes. So I know nothing. I would hope it's better.
I do remember it being better. And not just because Ryan Gosling is in it.
Shout out Ryan Gosling.
For other reasons too.
Canadians.
Shout out Canada.
Yes.
Or Canada.
The,
I said Canada.
That's fine.
Oh my God.
That's fine. The hit rate on Canadians, just like as a people, top tier country. Almost every like Canadian artist that I've seen, I've been like, there's something special here. So
Yeah.
shout out Canada. I promise I do not hate British musicians. It's just the British filmmakers that I can't stand, and maybe it's their attitude.
Yes.
I don't know.
Who knows?
Speaking of British musicians, next week, tune in, everybody. We got a real good one for you.
Hint, hint.
Yeah, hint, hint.
Hint, hint. Even though you can already just go and see what the next episode, but where can you see that?
Exactly. I was just going to ask the same thing, but you beat me to it. That would be our Instagram. And where can people find our links if they want to see what we've watched and listened to over the past few weeks or our lifetime?
Why, you can go to the link tree in the description of this video or on our Instagram to get links to literally everything, to our letterbox, to our radar music, which there was an issue with it for me, but I fixed it. Just letting y'all know.
Hell yeah.
What other links are there? I think that's all the links, right?
There's TikTok where we'll be posting some
That's
videos. I know
right.
David's working on some of those real quick. So
Literally, I was editing it this morning.
yeah, we'll have some of those up. And some people may be asking, what do Blade Runner or The Midnight have to do with Halloween? And for that, I say it's dark. It's kind of grungy. The movie this is. It's kind of an edgier vibe. It's not scary, I would say, but it's a thriller-ish kind of feeling.
And it certainly terrorized Brandon's brain. So
It
there you
really
go.
did. And then as far as the music is concerned, this just feels like kind of like a warm fall night to me. So,
Which I also agree with. And hey, for any of you who are like, oh, this was not Halloween-y enough, October-y enough, just wait for next week's episode.
literally just wait and go hit up that Instagram and see what you need to watch and listen to before you come back to the same very place in 7
Exactly.
days.
Exactly. And hey, if you want to help us out, which we know you guys do, you guys are nice people, right? If you want to help us out, you can rate our podcast, leave a review on Apple Podcasts. That always, always helps us. You can also tell your family and friends. Tell them also to listen to the greatest podcast that exists. Maybe, probably not, totally not. But anyways,
Yeah, I mean, that sounds perfect to me. I think we will see you next week for the final installment of season 1's Halloween month.
see you next week.